the last scene that we had with Akali before all of this is happening is Faye returning from the meeting and the Discord or Zoom meeting, whichever one of them sponsors our show, it'll be that. Um, this episode is brought to you by Skype.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 106, part 2. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Edge.
It's been so long. It's been so long since we sat down to talk about this.
Oh, hey, hello there. You're still
Hello
here.
there. Hello
welcome
there.
back. We're continuing the Bow the Kunai, the story that we've been having so much fun talking about. If you made it through the first episode, which is like 40 minutes, slow clap. Thank you. Welcome. To another 40 minutes of your life. It's gonna we're gonna hop straight into it.
Yeah, we love you, and now we're gonna just trap you here for another 40.
Quick, close the door behind them before they can run.
well, before they run, let's at least get the housekeeping out of the way so that.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do that twice. So
they can run away with that.
You can listen to us everywhere. You can email us at podcastcore, that's COR, @gmail.com. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Follow us on all the platforms. We appreciate that. Leave a like, a comment, short review. And for this one, tell a friend to understand the complexity of family by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Man, I come from a big family. If someone can understand that complexity, I would really appreciate it, because I don't. I don't think anyone can truly understand the complexity of family. But here we are, just false advertisement in our show.
So we're good at it. So in the first part, we told you we broke this into 3 parts to make it understandable. We did the same here, but we are picking up where we left off. So in this first part, we're picking up back in the Southern Valley, where the youths have just stumbled across 20 Navori warriors, specifically the Navori Brotherhood. And naturally, the group is looking to Faye like, what the fuck do we do? Because we're not even supposed to be here. They want to decide on the next course of action. And one of the boys mentions, they should inform the adults. That's the smart one. Another boy mentions we should just fight them. He's the dumb one. And yes, we get these 2 separations very early.
Yeah, I'm glad that that Faye's got her little angel and her little devil on either shoulder.
He's like, we can take them. She's like, no, there's half of us and we're children.
But luckily, she is a Kinku apprentice, so yeah, she's going to find the way to balance these 2.
Yeah, so Faye channels her inner Kennen here and decides that not to tell the adults, but only because this will lead to a direct conflict and naturally deaths, causing more imbalance. Good, Faye, good. She decides, though, that they need to convince the men to leave of their own volition. So how are they going to do this? Well, to do this, Faye reminds everyone about the boar plan. Hey, remember the thing we did and then we got in trouble? Well, it worked, sorta, until Akali got involved. Let's do that, but this time just remain unseen while making the sound of gray owls. And here we learn that to Ionians, this is seen as a bad omen, and the men will think this area is barren with no village and obviously cursed as well. And Faye knows that they're looking to force individuals to join the fight against foreign invaders. And this is something that I don't know if we went into detail about in any of our other Ionian episodes, but what makes these guys the bad guys, although they're willing to kill if they have to their own people, is that they still want to fight the Noxian invasion. They want to protect Ionia, but in a different way. And they don't want to negotiate the way to do it, like obviously Shen, Kennen, and Mame have been doing. They will force you to help them, and if you resist, you get the bullet.
And to kind of clean up a little bit from our last episode too, like one of the things that Kennen scouted that he brought up during that meeting was a conflict at the Placidium, which is, for listeners of our Irelia episode, that's where Irelia starts to really become a shining symbol of the Ionian resistance. So we know that the resistance, the spirit of resistance at this time is really strong. And we know later on that groups like the Navori, um, they decide to keep fighting and to try to get more power. So these guys, they're power hungry, all right? And anyone who's power hungry has no interest in the balance of things, which is very much against what the Kinku are about.
Yeah. And one other thing, they're snatching children too. So if you're not going to join, they're going to take the kids from your village and raise them to want to fight in this battle. So there's a lot of bad things going on, a lot of
Yeah.
conflicts within conflicts, which is something that once again, we're using Faye as the conduit for the confusion of so many things happening at once on a level that she can't comprehend as a 12-year-old.
Yeah. It's so deep. It's so deep, but you know, at the same time, like you can't really think about it too much because these guys are still right in front of you, and we got to figure out what the hell we're gonna do because
Exactly.
every second that passes is another step they take towards us.
So the mission begins, and Faye gets ahead of it this time by giving Akali an actual job, which is to stay hidden, stay at the edge of the valley, and then if things go bad, run as fast as you can to tell the adults, because she knows timing wise, it'll take them about 25 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes to get there. So that's her plan, and Akali gives her the thumbs up, which is good. And then Faye takes her place at a vantage point behind a boulder where she can't be seen but can see everything. And she decides if things start to go awry, that she will be the one to handle the killing portion of this skirmish if needed.
Yeah, which is one badass. All right, like Faye's about that life. All right, that's
Mhm.
really cool. But at the same time, they just spelled out why it's such a bad idea to like fight if this plan doesn't work. So the idea of like, yeah, if things go south, I have my bow and arrows ready. No, you're ninjas. If it doesn't work, your plan is to do this from hiding. If it doesn't work, just run. They're not going to see you. Like so it's there's still just
Yeah.
that childlike thought process behind it.
Yeah, we must stand in and fight. But the funny thing that happens is they get in a position. Everyone's in position except Omi. So you remember the dumb kid who wanted to fight the 20 grown men? That's him. And he was taking a bit longer to get his like vine wrapped around him so he could scale the tree properly. So he just figures it out and scurries up there. And then finally, Faye begins the screeching noise that's resembling the gray owls, and then the others follow. And they get a little boost in their favor. They get a little AoE effect where the environment around them, it starts to become windy, darker, and it starts howling, and it's working in their favor to really scare these guys off. And the Navori kind of go back and forth on the decision. You know, they're standing in their place like, what the fuck? This is already bad omen. We knew nothing was out here, until the leader finally says, okay, you know what? Let's just leave. This was a bad idea. He gives up, gives the retreat order, says there's nothing to be found, and then they bounce.
Yeah, there's nothing more beautiful than a plan well executed, watching it come to fruition, seeing that it worked just as intended, and now Faye is going to take a moment to celebrate. So she's like, "Hey, we did it, guys!" And it's in this moment that she realizes why they got that extra boon in their favor.
And this is the part of the story where, like, reading it obviously is enjoyable. We've mentioned that a million times. But this was a turn I did not expect, but totally makes sense in what's been going on. And then obviously bolsters the story concepts. But all the children begin falling from the trees. Like she doesn't see anybody responding to her saying, hey, we're done, let's go home. They begin falling with the vines wrapped more around them, almost like they're bundled up and tied against their will. And she notices that the valley's beginning to move under them. You have branches tangling together. You have shrubs like moving along the ground, brushes moving along the ground, and it's starting to become this large twisting entity of entwined wood and parts of this valley. And it is a corrupted spirit. And I did not think we would have a reference point in this episode for our Maokai episode. But for you OG listeners, if you remember our Maokai episode, how this happens is explained in that. Obviously, that takes place in the Shadow Isles, but this is really cool to see
Yeah.
happen here because if you have that information, this makes sense to you.
Yeah, it's very good information to have, and it also does help to kind of put into perspective that, the world of Runeterra itself doesn't always require a ruination to happen for things like Maokai to come into existence.
Yeah.
But uh, this is also very good storytelling because one of the things that Faye was telling the kid, I already forgot the dude's name, and
Which was
it's
the
right
dumb
in
one?
front of me. No, during her bow practice, where it's like, "Hey, we weren't supposed to be playing out in that on that
Oh,
side of the
Hisso.
mountain." Yeah, because it's like, "Hey, Hiso, the that there's frequent landslides and stuff over there. We
Yeah,
were told not to stay away from there." And now we see that the landslides weren't completely natural. like they
exactly.
it's like, oh, there's evil spirits out here. That's what's causing all of this. But fortunately for right now, it's just, only grabbing kids and eating them.
Or trying to eat them. But this does confirm Faye's fears. So we go back to, her internal conflict of she went through all that trouble of being more adult about the situation, thinking about balance, but it was too late because in the Southern Valley, remember we referenced how the Navori were, they would usually be more stealthy, be more respectful of the brush they were walking through as they were doing their scouting, but they were just hacking away at things, careless, treating the environment like crap. This also played into the imbalance, which the result is the same. And now they have to deal with the spirit. So one thing that she's thankful for is she does have a special dust on her that's meant for warding off dark spirits. They usually coat their weapons in it, but she only has several arrows. I think at this point, 13 arrows specifically. And she's like, okay, well, she begins firing. She frees some of the children with the arrows, but as they escape, two more get caught again, and they begin to get dragged into or towards the maw that this creature has created for itself to chomp down on some children in peril. He warned you.
I tried. I tried. It's like me watching Made in Abyss all over again.
Oh no.
Ugh.
So suddenly, she notices Akali rushing towards the monster, the opposite of what was supposed to happen. In a moment of shock, though, Faye was concerned, but noticing that the tree was giving all its attention to Akali and still having trouble catching her. Once again, we talked about how her and Kennen constantly are playing tag without the tag part. But you're starting to see the fruits of his, what looks like just fun nature paying off. Akali is essentially faster than any of the other children when she's in the mode, right? Like in the zone.
Yep. And we also do get to not only see like Akali just being Akali, but we get to see a bit of Faye. Like one of the reasons why Mame is uplifting Faye to be her successor because during this we're getting that inner monologue of Faye because she's still a 13-year-old girl,
Mhm.
yeah, basically, fighting for her life and the lives of her friends. So we're getting that inner monologue and of this child struggling with that idea, but we're during that monologue, we're seeing the actual practice of the Kinku training of that Neo and Nie in effect here because she's got that monologue, she's struggling with it, but she keeps stamping it down and letting her training take over.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason that that her bows or her arrows are finding their mark because of that practice. So it was perfect to have that little training bit before she got here because it sets the stage for the audience to really appreciate that, yeah, Faye would be able to do this. And
Yeah.
it sets the stage for the audience that Akali would be faster than all the other kids because she's chasing Raiden.
Exactly. Exactly. And what is icing on top is that Faye and Akali start to notice that they're working very well together. Where Faye's finding her mark, so Akali's able to distract the monster now from eating the other children, and Akali would dodge, freeing other children as she could, and then Faye would shoot down any limbs or branches that got close to Akali. So it's working. Everything is working in tandem. But This confidence doesn't last too long. There's a moment where the ground begins trembling again. A nasty vapor starts to be released, and Akali starts getting dizzy. And as she's getting dizzy and kind of slowing down, there's a wall of thrashing wood that seals her in this small little prison.
Yeah, this is a point of the story too, where for almost all of this we've been going from Faye's perspective, and now during this just flurry of action, we're kind of going back and forth. Like we are getting bits and pieces of Akali's perception of this too, but with Akali, it's completely different. Like Faye is really dealing with this turmoil and anxiety which makes sense because has taken on a leader role.
Yeah.
Akali has not taken on that role, so Akali is like, I am absolutely terrified for my life and my friends. And if it weren't for the fact that we could all die, this would be awesome.
It's like a roller
So,
coaster to her,
yeah, like
but with
she is riding the just wave of emotions. So like there's two different kinds of manic here.
So Faye's jumping between these rocks where she is trying to make her way towards Akali while giving Akali and the kids a route to escape. She's getting low on arrows. As we mentioned before, she didn't start out with many. She only has 3 left at this point. The first one she shoots, blowing a hole in the side of the prison that's created around Akali, allowing her to escape. The second shot she uses to deflect a giant fist that's going for Akali as she's escaping. But before she can get off the last one, an avalanche begins near her feet, and she gets caught in it. So she gets hit by a bunch of rocks, and when it comes to an end and the avalanche kind of settles, she's laying there shivering, buried amongst this rubble. And there's this taste of iron in her mouth. That's never good. And there's this intense burning sensation that's also bad. And then she looks down, the bow snapped, and her right leg is no longer there. It's just crushed pulp, and she begins to lose consciousness.
So again, I mentioned Made in Abyss. So any other fans of Made in Abyss out there? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you're doing this again to yourselves. But yeah, yeah, very much a Made in Abyss thing. Now to lighten the mood a little bit,
Good
flashback.
luck.
Yeah. And by lighten the mood, it's me being an a-hole, all right? Because flashback to me saying that they're dumb kids when she's like, yeah, if my plan goes south, I'll be the one to take the kill.
Yeah.
No, the plan should have been to run away. This is the point of the story where we finally figure out how many arrows she brought with her, and she brought 13. And they counted 20. They counted 20 dudes. And she's like, if the plan goes south, I'll fight. You literally don't have enough arrows to kill them all. So yeah, kids will be kids.
Kids will be kids. This takes us to the part 3 of this story to wrap things up, where Akali is still in her mode, like Hedge said. We're bouncing between perspectives, and she's dragging these 2 children now as she's moving, and the monster is trying to follow her, and he begins running in the direction of Faye because that's where Akali's headed as she's calling out for her. And then she notices her condition, and Akali finally drops back down to reality. She stops helplessly, and the other 2 kids are screaming because now the monster is standing over them as she's standing over Faye, and it's clutching her kunai pendant around her neck, which was naturally given to her by her mother, feeling like this is it. We tried, but I think this is where it ends.
And like this is one of the reasons that we keep chiming in that this is such good storytelling. Like the author does such a good job of really bringing you into the emotions of the characters here, because the last scene that we had with the collie before all of this is happening is Faye returning from the meeting, and the Discord or Zoom meeting, whichever one of them sponsors our show, it'll be that. Um, this episode's brought to you by Skype. All right, but with that scene though, it was a collie showing the anxiety that, well, I guess more the trauma and her reaction to it because she was storing her food, and a collie's like, I don't want anyone I don't want to lose anyone again, and I don't want any of my friends and family to get hurt again. Never again. And that what snaps her back into reality? Seeing the scene from Made in Abyss right in front of her. And that's a hell of a way to get snapped back into reality. And now the stage is
Yeah.
set for her to just get crushed by this spirit. But since she's a playable character and looking full grown in the video game, something tells me she's not going to get crushed.
So that caught me off guard. So
We got him.
as Hedge mentioned, suddenly a rain of kunai appeared, and Mame was on the creature, and ready to fucking pay back for what it's doing to the children. And this what we're about to, the part we're about to go through now is very well done because they're going to give you something you expect in this style of story, but the ending will not be how you expect it to be, and we'll tell you why. And that makes it all the more better. But she shows up, and this is followed by strikes of lightning. So Raiden's here, and Kennen is too fast to be seen, but he's assaulting the monsters as well. And they quickly dispatch this monster, at least the physical form, because they do this for breakfast. This is kind of their bag. And then, as quickly as they dispatch this monster's physical form, the man of the hour shows up. No longer meditating, Shen arrives, and he pulls out that sick ass arcane blade. Slowly walks up to the monster and says, I'm gonna take care of this. And then he disappears in a shimmer.
I really, really like this because the joke has constantly been that, Shen is the worst ninja ever. Um, and so then it's like we get this scene of Kennen doing Raiden things. So
Mhm.
like you only know that Kennen's striking because there's just lightning exploding
Yeah.
from the spirit. We get Mame showing why she is the Fist of Shadow, regardless of if she was ready to take over or not. Like Mame is a badass.
Yeah.
Like the descriptions of what she's doing in this fight is awesome. And then it's like, okay, oh, Shin shows up. Oh, he's pulling out the sick arcane blade. What's gonna happen? Shin's gone. and, and of course, like his role is to like maintain. He is more focused on the spiritual world than the physical world, as far as the Kinku are concerned. Which the Kinku
Yeah.
are supposed to be maintaining balance, but the way they maintain balance is like one head is all spiritual and the other head's all physical. So of course he shows up as like, it's not over yet, but I'll make it over, and then he's gone because he's in the spirit realm.
And what this gives us, so for people who haven't listened to the Shen episode yet, go listen to that. We talk about how Shen starts to have an unhealthy relationship with the spirit realm, and in his own personal conflict of balance, treating both realms equally, he uses the spirit realm to travel. So Kennen's just fast, but you remember at the mountain where he just shows up? Where do you think he came from? He's in the spirit realm most of the time, and then coming out to hang out when. So either he's meditating, he's nowhere to be seen, or doing anything. That's why it feels like Shen's always out of the loop or outside of what's going on, because he's literally outside of what's going
Yeah,
on.
he's legitimately outside of the loop by choice.
Thinking
And what's he-
outside the box, quote unquote.
And then the worst part of it all is that 9 times out of 10, what is he doing in the spirit realm? He's meditating. It's like the scene from Avengers. It's like the scene from Avengers with Doctor Strange, like looking through all the possible scenarios that
Yeah.
could happen, like leading into Endgame. So like that scene with him floating there, eyes closed, just meditating. That's Shin, but literally throughout the whole saga. Like not just a scene in a movie. That's all the movies. Is Shin.
So Ken tells the kids that he's going to take care of this from the source, which is the spirit element of the corrupted spirit. And then Mame, finally takes a look at Faye and is kind of speechless and emotionless as she goes over to the unconscious girl. And this is where we jump into the next scene where Faye wakes up finally in a village hut, so she's alive. Thank goodness. And she hears whispers outside from the other children, kind of recounting the events to Mame, who Mame is kind of not believing what they're saying because they're really gassing Akali up, and she can't really believe it because although Faye is her mother, she's kind of absent, which is themes that we've talked about consistently. Is she's more of a mother to Faye than she is a collie. So when a collie does things, it's just almost like another kid in the village, right? It's not my daughter. Not to that extent of disrespect, but just she's never paying attention. So as the kids are telling them what a collie was doing while Faye was down, she doesn't believe them, right? She's like, okay, you guys are gassing her up. Um, and Akali, is excited to see Faye as she wakes up because she's a child and she's scared and everything just happened and everything's probably rushing back because Faye is unconscious. She doesn't know what's going on. And when she
Yeah.
awakes, Akali jumps on her. She's like, hey, what's up? How you feeling? Blah, blah, blah. And Faye immediately pushes her away and is just frustrated because as she's trying to sit up, she can't really get her balance. And it's because her leg is gone. Her right leg is severed below the knee.
And like it it's another point of like the storytelling being so good because like this scene really does help kind of reinforce why Mame doesn't treat her daughter like this, like a very good acolyte. Like, she's not recognizing Akali's martial talents. And it's likely because she feels the same way as Akali of I don't want to lose anything again. And so, like, who would you rather put into a position that's constantly going to be at the headline of conflict? Your own kid or someone else's kid?
Exactly.
So it's kind of it's rough. It's
Yep.
rough, but let's dive into this conversation here because even though it's rough and I can empathize a little bit, I don't think Mame handled it well.
No. And this is where Mame's inexperience comes into play about her position conflicting with obviously being a single mother at this point, and then also her position as the Fist of Shadow. It's all coming to a head here, and this is also to represent how Faye's been feeling up to this point of, oh shit, the adults don't have it figured out either. So Mame's struggling, and this whole scene here where FaZe gets angry at Akali, says it's all her fault, everything went to shit. She doesn't believe that, but she's angry, sad, and scared because her future is now gone. Everything she's been working for is gone. The future of things being too late before she could become part of the full order came to fruition in her eyes. Right, her fears were justified, and Mame's arriving just as this is happening. As she scares Akali away, Akali runs, and then Mame kind of goes to Faye and makes this even harder because May starts to have her own doubts and apologizes to Faye for being a terrible teacher. She said she molded her mind incorrectly around everything that happened. She gave her a view of Shen that was negative, right? She kind of fed into that. She restricted her as far as, pushing her to take action, even though that's what she's supposed to do for her job. And all of this is kind of, you're seeing all of Mame's frustration that we get off screen, but is represented through how Faye is frustrated, is coming to a head here at a very emotional moment for both, which is not something the ninjas usually do in the open like this.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because like we again, like you said, this is emotions that Mame is experiencing off screen
Yeah,
because on screen none of what Mame is worried about and what she was feeling was represented because
exactly.
on screen she was the one that was constantly telling Faye like you need to slow down. You need to slow down and you need to be patient. And then it's like, "Oh, I did a bad job, and I gave you a bad look at I made you look at Shin negatively, and I encouraged you to do too much."
Yeah.
Even though she was the only voice in there that was going, "Hey, chill."
Yeah.
chill, kid. So it's kind of like that juxtaposition is weird, but it makes sense because this is such an emotionally charged conversation
Yeah.
and an emotional moment for both of the characters. It makes sense that it's all just kind of bubbling up to a head. And it does end with her going like, look, even if we got to go outside of Ionia, we will find a way for you to walk again, and you are going to take my spot as the next Fist of Shadow. So it is like a very beautiful and emotional scene as far as Mame and Faye just, really showing their commitment to each other. And nothing of that is negative unless you are Mame's daughter and you're watching the whole thing happen
Yeah,
right in
because this
front
is
of
also
you.
the first time they allow themselves to openly cry, right? It's been a theme
Yeah.
where Faye's issue is that she takes sadness, immediately converts it to anger, and then makes poor decisions. But here she's finally able just to let everything go because she feels she has nothing left, right? And yeah, Akali's standing in the doorway. She ended up coming back, but witnessing this whole thing unfold. And to her, it's a level of, I mean, her mother's already neglected the loving care that she felt she needed, and she's seeing that on display in front of her more than ever right now because she feels like she's never had her mother express that level of love at any point in her life to her, and she's only 9, right? And she,
Ugh.
starts crying, clutches her kunai again, and then runs off. And we're never told where she gets the kunai pendant from. I originally thought it was from Mame. Based on everything that's been happening, though, I think it was from Tahoe, her father.
I think so too.
And the reason I think that is what we're going to talk about next. So that's where we wrap up. We get a
Um,
bittersweet ending where the
yeah.
kids are all right. One is maimed. Oh my God.
I was gonna make that joke. I was gonna make that joke, but you
I'm
got
so
there.
sorry. I'm so sorry. This is
I
what
was gonna
100
make that
episodes
joke,
does to
but
you.
you got there.
Go ahead, man. Take over, Hedge. Take over.
Yeah. Like it is a very rough ending because
Yeah.
we have Faye who ends up maimed.
Yeah.
And then Mame, the Akali's mom, is being more nurturing towards Faye, which technically makes sense because if you think of it as like a single parent
Yeah.
dealing with 2 kids, you got to deal with the kid that's hurt more.
Yeah.
And Faye is definitely hurt more here. But because of that, she's completely neglected the current relationship between Faye and Akali. Because their relationship that it ends here shouldn't have to be that way. Because and Faye even, feels it in the dialogue there where it's like she doesn't mean what she's lashing out at Akali. She's just lashing out at the person that's there
Yeah.
because she's hurt and she's angry. And we do know that when she's sad, because she's very sad right now, she turns that into anger.
Mhm.
So she's just going to lash out at the first person there. But quote unquote mom is not actually trying to mend that right now, which it plays into the inexperience. And that's what sets the stage for what we know later on is going to be Akali spending more time with Shin. We know that from Shin's story, which if you haven't listened to that episode, you can check it out. It doesn't really cover a lot of Akali, but that's why Akali is Shin's apprentice.
Yeah.
It's because of this, and God, is that just heartbreaking.
And listen, we all know just from this, Akali is no Eye of Twilight. That's just not a thing, and that has its own issues. Listen, we'll get to Akali sooner or later. They'll release her, and we'll go back.
Yeah. Hey, the Eye of Twilight definitely needs to be, a freebound spirit that thinks that running around for her life is fun. Like that's what the Eye of Twilight's about.
Yeah, but what you do get a little bit from Shen's story and a little bit from even Jin's story, which is a fun time, so definitely go listen to that to see the interactions between Shen and Zed in that situation. But Akali is a part of that big mission, and Shen is very protective of her, despite his very off-putting nature. And that, along with her relationship with Kennen, makes it very complex where it's very rare in a story where you have a character lose a parent, have the other parent kind of be despondent, and there be 2 other figures there that kind of fill a role despite you still having a parent. Remember, Faye is the one that lost both parents, right? But Kennen and Shen almost become her like replacement proxy father despite her mother being very involved in the organization she's a part of. It's very interesting there and very complex on what we end up developing as this, the popular coalition of ninjas in this game.
Yeah, and it's really cool because a lot of the things that we get covered in the bios, like and this really highlights why Ryan and I were so excited to dive into these kinds of episodes, is because the bios just kind of give you facts.
Yes.
And like specifically with Kinnon's bio, it's like the fact is that Kinnon thought that the next Fist of Shadow should be Akali.
Yeah.
All right. And that's it. That's all you get from the bio. And it's like, so why didn't Akali become the Fist of Shadow? Especially since we know from the bio that the Fist of Shadow, like Akali is the daughter of the Fist of Shadow. Why wasn't that the natural conclusion? And the reason that it wasn't is very complex. Like there's this very complex relationship between Mame and Akali for whatever reasons, why Mame kind of stays at a distance when it comes to Akali, but not only is she staying at a distance, there's an orphan of her best friend that she feels like she needs to take more care of her, and also that Faye should be the next Fist. It's like she sees something in Faye that's like, no, this is going to be a better fit than Akali will be.
Yeah.
And then we know that it's like, oh well, but Kinnon wanted Akali to be the next Fist. Kinnon wasn't really trying to like force it in because he knows that's not his place. He's just, in his own way, kind of uh, in a sense, training Akali to be a very strong warrior,
Yeah.
like in his own way, kind of training her there, and he's very gently kind of suggesting, hey, maybe you should look outside of Faye. Like it's not a ham-fisted thing of like, nope, it should be a collie. I have set my foot down. I am the heart of the tempest. Like no, there's a lot of different political intrigue, and this story really highlights on that, where you don't get that in the bios.
Yeah.
And that's why we're excited to go into these stories, because there's a lot going on in just a relationship between these ninjas right here, these head ninjas.
Yeah, and the out of all the themes we've mentioned constantly throughout these two parts, balance is the big one, right? It's always balancing the fact of how Mame treats Akali versus Faye. There's an imbalance there. The imbalance between Shen's presence in the mortal realm versus the spirit realm. The imbalance of the actual internal conflicts and external conflicts. That's the part that makes Kennen so busy, is that he has to maintain that in all these aspects. And he tries his best, right? There's only so much Kennen to go around, regardless of how fast he can do it. But that's the biggest theme out of all this, and that's the point you should focus on when you understand everything that's happening. And this is what gives, branching off from imbalance is what gives this area of the world so much density when it comes to story. Like this stuff could be its own book, right?
Oh, easily. Easily. Because again, like not only could this stuff be its own book, like you could easily write a book just following the Kinku after the betrayal, right?
Yeah,
Like that there's tons of content there. And again, that's just the Kinku. We're not looking at the resistance under Irelia.
yeah,
We're not looking at how that resistance is coinciding with karma. We're not looking at the Vastaya, who are forming up their own kind of rebellion amongst like the other mortals there to like take care of themselves. And we aren't even looking at the living weapons that come out of Ionia here. Like
yeah.
this is just one piece of Ionia, and there's tons that is going around centering the Kinku Order. And so, yeah, like this is one of the reasons that we get so stoked about this stuff, because there's tons of content here.
Exactly. And as we talked about in our Jin episode, how do we get Jin to Piltover? And what this story gives us from the Kennen aspect and the Kinku aspect is, how do we get the Kinku to Piltover and vice versa? Well, if you know, in Piltover there are people with missing limbs. They're ahead of the curve when it comes to enhanced cybernetics and
I,
enhanced parts. Who needs a
And
leg?
yeah, for the Legends of Runeterra fans
Yeah.
out there, Piltover would definitely be the place to look at because, to quote a voice line, "Hey, I lost an arm, so I got a new one." Or no, I broke my arm, so I got a new one. Like, yeah, like for Piltover, for the Piltovians and the Zonites, yeah, that's a Tuesday.
Exactly, exactly. And then the icing on the cake here is that, we joke about Kennen being Raiden, and part of that is we've talked about at length Heimer's importance, both from the arcane show perspective and what we have in the story. And his importance in Piltover is a mimic of Kennen, right? And to have those two interact, one being obviously from a technology side, one from a spiritual side, um, would be very cool and would make sense because remember, they're both Yordles.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Wink, wink, nod, nod. But also, they hold very powerful positions within their societies.
Yes.
Granted, Cannon's is much more from the shadows. Heimerdinger is, thanks to Arcane, we know now he is not in the shadows.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. But since they do have such influence within their organizations and within the civilizations that are built around those organizations, any interactions between those two could have a lot of different political effects to both the city of Piltover and the land of Ionia. And then and we know that any kind of political strife between like those two civilizations would be very entertaining because Kennen would just be on the side going, "But the spirits!" And then there's also the chance that like if they were to ever meet and have that conversation, that like the conversation would get cut short with Ziggs just chucking a bomb at them. I would absolutely love to kind of see that conversation, even if they are Yordles.
Yeah, and it would make sense also because as we talked about in Jin's episode, there's a hunt for Jin and he could be in Piltover. So that would also give you a little bit of crossover. But we digress. We promised you 40 minutes. We gave you 40 minutes. And this is the first time we've done like a part 2 of a mainline story since I think Sentinels of Light, the comic. We did a part 2 way back when, which is another fun time with a lot of information.
Yeah, that was the last time we did a part 2. And if you did enjoy, like having 2 episodes branching out from these longer stories, hit us up and let us know. Podcastcore@gmail.com. Like we enjoy doing this kind of stuff and we enjoy these stories because there is a lot in there and we enjoy the content. So if this is something that you enjoy listening to, let us know because maybe we can dive into it. And I know that Ryan is sick and tired of listening to me beg for us to talk more about the Jin hunt. So like, you just give us that feedback so that I have more ammunition to throw at him when I want to cover these stories.
In our Discord meetings.
Sponsor us, Discord.
And with that, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another mainline episode.
Yeah, take care, everybody.